Report. Cherry Blossom, TAC 27735-243. Changelings. Reporting Officer, Supervisor Kasdan, Baltimore Recording Construct, Clearance Level OMICRON. Welcome back, agents. If you are listening to this, it means you are still alive and you've made your dead drop. This month, we are going to cover an extremely unusual kind of deviant, the kind of thing literally out of a fairy tale. I am referring, of course, to C-type Jmards, more colloquially known as Changelings. Some of you of European descent may have heard the term before. I can assure you, the legends are only the half of it. C-type Jmards are a complex subject, one we have only begun to truly unravel in recent years in the wake of Operation Titan Killer and our subsequent offensive maneuvers against the deviants. These so-called Changelings have proven relatively easy for our hunter-killer teams to capture, and interrogated subjects have offered a positive ocean worth of information about their kind. Almost none of it is useful. Much of the data we have gathered from C-type Jmards is couched in myth or legend or fantasy, or it has been confirmed to be outright lies. With that said, we have been able to garner a few kernels of truth about their kind. There was a time, so long ago that we cannot be truly sure how far in the past, that the dimensional barriers between worlds were much weaker than they are today, if they were even present at all. We have been able to confirm this fact not only from interrogated C-type Jmards, but also from captured lupine deviants and even deviant awakened from the traditions. Something happened to shore up the firmament, and when it did, some Jmards found themselves trapped on our side of the wall. This was not necessarily a deterrent for these creatures. They found that they could feed on people's belief, on their happiness, on their joy, on their pain. They found fuel within our stories. In many ways, C-type Jmards discovered how to nourish themselves directly from the human experience. They grow stronger when people celebrate the seasons, or when they suffer in the name of their gods. Indeed, many of these trapped Jmards came to be revered or worshipped as gods themselves, though I can assure you this is not the case. This power, the energy that C-types feed off of, has been referred to by interrogated individuals as glamour. They need this glamour to continue their existence, and without it, they evaporate away, disappearing from the consensus like water on a hot summer sidewalk. So-called glamour was strong in the world for millennia. You are already aware of this from past lessons and from your interactions with our tradition counterparts, but human beings are full of wild beliefs, and these beliefs drive cultural norms. C-types were able to subsist off of these beliefs, and indeed, they even influenced the development of some of them to be more directly in their favor. C-types during this time period could truly command godlike powers. Accounts from captured C-type historians claim that they could even match the tradition's so-called magic. Our analysts find this hard to believe, as C-types stand next to no chance before our own enlightened science, but we will dive into that more in a little bit. For now, understand that C-types prior to 1200 CE showcased the same ability to warp reality as Jmards within the interdimensional space. They may not have been true gods, but it was certainly hard to argue when their power was showcased. This only really began to change near the end of the Middle Ages. People were beginning to truly climb out of the squalor of the Dark Ages by 1200 CE, and as they did so, the first seeds of true science began to grow. The vestiges of our own union, the many disparate groups that would come to form the Order of Reason, were in large part responsible for this slow shifting of society towards reason and enlightenment. The opposite energy to glamour, a force that the C-types refer to as banality, became strong across the world. The more that people began to rely on logic to perceive reality, the weaker the C-types became. Their powers waned without excessive glamour to fuel them, and some of them even began to fade out of reality entirely, either becoming mortal beings or simply disappearing from existence. Any remaining cracks or pathways through the firmament to the interdimensional space began to seal themselves. Captured C-type subjects have professed under interrogation to calling this area of history the Shattering, a time when their connections to the dreaming were lost. Okay, time to pause, agents. Like I said, C-types are complicated. What is the dreaming? I can hear all of you asking that question to yourselves. Many of you are already familiar with the interdimensional space. Perhaps you've even been fortunate enough to travel there once or twice. A few more of you may even understand how the interdimensional space intersects all of reality. Well, that includes the collective subconscious. The area that intersects with the collective subconscious is called the dreaming by C-types. Yes, the human collective unconscious is a thing. What's more, some evidence procured by Vorge engineer exploratory teams has suggested that this area of the interdimensional space actually touches on conscious, sentient beings everywhere in the universe. The dreaming is a realm of pure chaos, a place where all ideals and vices, all thoughts and emotions swirl together into one incoherent mass. Stories are made real within the dreaming. Void engineer exploratory teams have reported encounters with figures such as Sherlock Holmes, Darth Vader, and Alexander the Great while attempting to map the collective subconscious. A project which has proven more maddening than enlightening. C-type JMARDs have professed under interrogation to be connected to the dreaming. Within the dreaming is a place many captured subjects have claimed is their original homeland, so to speak, the place where they all originally come from. C-types call this place Arcadia, and the few pathways through the firmament that led back to Arcadia began to collapse as the tides of reason and science rose higher in the world. The dreaming is so chaotic and unchartable that even the C-types have trouble finding their way through it without these set paths to follow, and more of them found themselves completely cut off from Arcadia. This, combined with the lower amount of glamour present in the material world, led to a crisis for C-type JMARDs. They were facing either extinction within the material plane, or an eternity of being lost in the collective subconscious as they tried to find their individual ways back home. It was an enterprising group of C-types that discovered a third option. C-types had engaged in a practice known as the Changeling Way for long eons after the creation of the firmament. The Changeling Way allowed C-types to temporarily limit their power and take on a mortal form. This process was co-opted to create a new ritual which took the Changeling Way to the extreme. C-types bound their metaphysical essence into actual human bodies, supplanting the natural energy, sometimes referred to as the mortal soul, which was supposed to be contained within those bodies, and instead utilizing the mortal beings as a kind of glamour spacesuit. This act helped to inure C-types to the rising tide of banality in the world and protected their existence by hijacking the mortal metaphysical reincarnation cycle. C-types who endured this advanced form of the Changeling Way found their powers severely limited, but they were also able to reincarnate across multiple mortal lives again and again and again. Indeed, while parasitic C-type essence replaces mortal souls at the moment of birth, it does not become activated until later in life, usually around the onset or culmination of puberty. C-types undergo a process which interrogated subjects have dubbed the chrysalis, a time of transformation when their C-type essence comes to dominate their existence. Changelings who endure chrysalis have been proven in laboratory conditions and through field observation to be able to perceive the interdimensional space, particularly the dreaming. Captured C-types have professed that they call this perception of the interdimensional space chimerical reality, and many individuals who endure chrysalis are plagued by violent hallucinations as the interdimensional space begins to peek through the firmament. Indeed, we have seen enormous success in capturing changelings via traditional mental health services. Most patients who come through the system are just sleepers who are in true need of help, but occasionally we stumble onto someone whose hallucinations have a little more oomph to them than standard delusions. While changelings are protected, they are not immune to the so-called force of banality, even in their human spacesuits. Indeed, banality can have a very real effect on them regardless, and we have been able to confirm this through extensive laboratory testing and field observation. Banality, in the modern sense, can be best summed up as drudgery or static thinking. Cubicle workspaces, factory assembly lines, pollution, even something as simple as a boring classroom lecture all can affect a changeling. Some things only cause mild physical or spiritual discomfort, but other things can create a very real sense of pain, almost as if the changeling's skin is burning. Which, at last, brings us to why changelings stand absolutely no chance against our enlightened science. Changelings react very badly in the presence of our technicians and within the confines of our laboratories. They cry, scream, collapse into incomprehensible gibbering masses of snot and convulsions. This has proven to be a boon to our hunter-killer teams, and in a way, it has made gathering information about changelings far easier. We capture them, and then we supply them with the energy they need and protect them from banality. In return, they answer their questions. If they refuse, then we simply leave them in a boring, empty, concrete room until they finally stop screaming. And they will eventually stop screaming. Changelings may be able to reincarnate alongside mortal souls, and they may have more of a buffer from banality, but it can still be fatal. C-types exposed to increasingly high levels of banality under laboratory conditions have been confirmed to have the metaphysical changeling aspect of their soul extinguished. Much like C-types prior to the shattering, today's changelings can still evaporate away like water on a hot summer sidewalk. This process has been called the undoing by interrogated subjects, and it results in the mortal vessel being left behind as a normal sleeper. Sometimes, they maintain memories of their changeling past, but most times, the memories fade away completely, replaced with a backdrop of life filled with the quiet humdrum shell that we have worked so hard to construct for the masses. Honestly, becoming undone might be the most merciful fate any of the vast myriad of deviant types can hope to achieve within our vision of consensus. I almost envy them, slipping away into blissful ignorance, consumed by their own little lives and unaware of the complicated mechanisms that surround them. Must be nice, right? In point of fact, a changeling has multiple phases of life based on the level of banality that they have been exposed to over time. These phases tend to come with a gradual weakening of C-type powers as a changeling progresses through them, though they do tend to develop a greater resistance to banality the further they progress. It is worth noting at this point that C-types of any phase can be of any age. An old man may endure a chrysalis and find himself filled with childlike wonder. A young toddler can endure a horrific, catastrophic event, and the trauma can seriously scar them even before they hit puberty. With that said, the phases of changeling life only unfold after the chrysalis has occurred, meaning that the progression from the stage known as childling to the stage known as grump cannot occur until the C-type essence has overtaken its mortal vessel. As mentioned, the different phases of changeling life are as follows: childling, wilder, and grump. Childlings are usually younger C-types who have just endured their chrysalis. This phase of changeling life is when a changeling is at their most powerful. Their mortal forms are suffused with energetic glamour that is natural to having an innocent outlook on life. They also tend to be the most dangerous simply because their childlike nature is underlined by a distinct lack of life experience, and life experience is necessary in order to wisely use their power. Glamour begins to fade as the childling grows and experiences the world, and eventually they will develop into a wilder. Wilders have more experience than childlings, and they are a bit more used to the banality which they find the world suffused in. With that said, they are still very close to the days of childlike wonder, and as such, they can command truly potent levels of glamour when wielding their powers. Wilders are dangerous, but tend to understand that they are also vulnerable to things like day-to-day drudgery and our hunter-killer teams. They are much more likely to hide their existence or find ways to act out while still hiding their presence. Grumps are the final phase of development for changelings, and they are the weakest of the three phases by far. Grumps have endured life, they have faced the tribulations of banality, and they are still standing. They have lost much of their old wonder and can no longer command the kind of power that a childling or wilder may have, but they are also by far the wisest of the developmental phases. A childling may have more power, but a grump will undoubtedly be more sure of how to use that power. C-types exist in a social and political hierarchy that is not too dissimilar from our own, but we will go into that structure more in another report. Today, we are going to be discussing the different morphology of the many different species of changeling. Hopefully, this will better prepare you for when you encounter these beings in the field. Interrogated subjects have revealed that changelings refer to the different species present within their deviant group as kith. Each of these kith have different biological and metaphysical properties which you can use to identify and counter them. The different types of changelings are Bogons, Clericons, Eshu, Knockers, Piskies, Puka, Redcaps, Satyrs, Selkies, Arcadian She, Autumn She, Slaw, and Trolls. There are a few types of kith outside of these 13, but they tend to be extremely rare inside of North America, and thus they have been excluded from this report. Each kith has its own predilections and weaknesses, and it is on you to know them so that you can properly counter them when encountered in the field. Bogons developed from C-type Jaymards that were tied to dreams and stories of service, charity, and curiosity. Like all C-types, however, this came with a dark side. Bogon may enjoy being of service, but they will oftentimes charge outrageous prices in exchange for their work. Captured Bogon subjects have exhibited a predilection for the comforts of home. They place a high degree of value on ideas of comfort, hearth, food, and family. Think something like the hobbits of Tolkienian fame. Bogons, even the darker ones, will always have a great respect for guests, and the ancient laws of hospitality can be readily turned against them if you are clever. Bogon trade and gossip, which makes them natural information brokers. Agents in the field are advised to try to capture Bogons whenever encountered, as they will almost always be viable sources of additional intelligence. Most of them tend to be short, plump, with large noses and calloused hands. Their metaphysical aspect, their so-called chimerical appearance, tends to have pointed ears. Bogon have a unique weakness that makes them easier to capture than other C-types. They have been shown, through field observation and under laboratory conditions, to be unable to resist the urge to help someone who is truly in need. Agents are advised that targeting civilians or other bystanders will cause Bogon to attempt to help them. Every single time. Plan your operations accordingly. Clericons, which I know I just mispronounced, are the basis for legends of the leprechaun in Western Europe and American folklore. Clericons are tied to dreams of fighting and storytelling. They are incredibly social and usually showcase a disposition for musical talent. Even those who can't play an instrument will be consummate storytellers capable of embellishing even the most humdrum tale into something exciting, even meaningful. Interrogation sessions with Clericons almost always yield a wealth of intelligence, but almost none of it holds up to later verification. Agents are advised not to trust this batch any further than you can throw them. Clericons also have a great love of brawling, They tend to believe that the truth about a person's character comes out in a fistfight, and they have a knack for getting under people's skin. That said, however, they also tend to be the first ones to let water pass under the bridge, and after a fight, they almost always call for a round of drinks. Holocron always have red hair, regardless of their skin complexion, and like the Bogon, their metaphysical aspect has pointed ears. Holocron share another trait which agents can use to identify them. They are hoarders. This is the basis for the legend of a leprechaun's gold, but the item in question need not be gold. Some Holocron hoard wealth, but others hoard vinyl CDs. Keep an eye out for people who cannot, and I mean truly cannot, stop collecting stamps. Holocron's obsession goes beyond anything human. They literally must spend time with their hoard, and interrogators have had great success in breaking Holocrons simply by separating them from their collections for an extended period of time. Agents are advised to remember this predilection when in the field, as it could prove useful against the otherwise wily and tough Holocrons. Our research seems to indicate that the Eshu spring from stories of wanderlust and messengers. Some interrogated subjects have claimed that the Eshu first sprang into being in Africa, but our anthropological subdivision is still debating this claim, as the Eshu fit the stereotype of the European elf almost to a T. They are tall, with long, graceful limbs and pointed ears. Again, they look like Tolkien's elves, but they hail from across the world, and thus they can come in any of the human ethnic groups. Eshu are born wanderers, and thus they can be difficult to catch, as they rarely stay in one place for very long. They tend to be fascinated by the cultures and people they find themselves surrounded by, and they will actively look to learn the history and social mores of wherever they are currently living. Eshu are born storytellers, even more so than the Holocron, and they weave the tales they hear on their travels together into a form of comprehensive and complex oral history. They are considered a high priority for capture by agents in the field for this reason, though it is admittedly difficult to locate them. Many Eshu adopt the dress and customs of whatever region they are currently passing through, and this makes them next to impossible to distinguish from most cosmopolitan populations. This tends to lead to a higher than average rate of collateral damage when hunter-killer teams are deployed against Eshu. One possible tactic for capturing them is to literally dare them to come with us. Laboratory tests seem to confirm that Eshu are intrinsically incapable of refusing a dare, though field agents have reported mixed results. Knockers are an interesting species of C-type. They tend to be isolationists, antisocial, and pessimistic almost to a fault, but they do possess an innate drive to create that has proven useful to several of our projects in the past. Knockers spring from dreams of innovation and invention, and they are constantly tinkering, creating artwork, or designing new marvelous toys. Knockers seem to be the least affected by the so-called banality of our enlightened science. Despite this, knockers are absolutely terrible with people, and are almost always loners living the lives of hermits. This makes them more difficult for our hunter-killer teams to locate, but their isolated lairs tend to be treasure troves of engineering that Iteration X loves to get their hands on. Several captured knockers have even made deals with the Union. They get to continue living, and we get to benefit from their expertise. So far, it has been a profitable arrangement, though of course contingency plans are in place should these relationships sour. Knockers appear truly inhuman in their metaphysical aspect. They sport thick, leathery skin, elongated, spindly limbs, and long fingers tipped in black talons. Their teeth are razor-sharp needles, sometimes even in their normal mortal guise. Hunter-killer teams are advised that they are to attempt the capture of any encountered knockers before proceeding to elimination, though it is not a priority objective. We could use their expertise, but we don't need it. Many knocker devices utilized against our teams in the field have showcased a kind of fundamental flaw, or Achilles heel, which could be exploited to destroy the entire apparatus. Research is ongoing to see if these flaws are somehow tied into the metaphysical nature of knockers, but they could simply be coincidences that landed in our favor. The next C-type is known as the Pisky. Piskies are an interesting variation, one which has proven both beneficial and elusive to gather intelligence on. You see, Piskies intrinsically blend in. They spring from stories of intrigue, spycraft, thievery, and messages, and as such, their features are nondescript. By this, I mean that they literally cannot be described. Piskies blend in with a crowd, any crowd, and as such, they make consummate spies. Indeed, the aristocracy on top of the Changelings' political structure utilizes Piskies mostly in this regard. They serve well as messengers, and they are considered a high-priority target for capture by hunter-killer teams because they almost always tend to carry intelligence not only on their local Changeling community, but on the rest of the deviants within their area as well. Agents should also be advised that even our own security procedures have been breached by Piskies in the past. You must remain vigilant to ensure that our ranks are not infiltrated by C-types. They are intrinsic thieves, naturally drawn to the possessions of others. Other C-types have said under interrogation that anything that goes into a Pisky's pocket will be there until the Pisky decides to remove it. You should ensure that despite the fact that they are a high priority for capture, no Pisky ever gets anywhere near Union technology. The predisposition for theft is so strong that a Pisky is physically incapable of resisting the urge to steal an object they truly desire, and this makes them extremely dangerous when it comes to proliferation of our technology. You can also use this fact as a field agent if you can obtain any intelligence on Piskies before launching a counter operation. You can bait them with something that they truly want, though figuring out exactly what that is often easier said than done. The Puka is another type of changeling, one that springs from old stories about prankish spirits intent on teasing and tricking mortals. They are chaotic and lie with an ease that seems inhuman. Puka can be dangerous and untrustworthy. They share a strong connection with the animal world, and a Puka's metaphysical self always exhibits animal features, things like foxtails, snouts, paws, etc. Puka slide through the natural world like grease, and seem to have some ability to influence the lives of natural animals. Puka also seem the easiest of all C-types to break. They barely last a day when in our custody, crying and screaming about banality the second that they are captured. A small minority of captured Puka have entered custody with a stoic, sullen acceptance, and then passed quietly into their undoing. Most, however, come in resisting with everything they have. Keep this in mind if you ever attempt to capture a Puka. Other captured C-types express a deep sense of grief when they learn of a Puka's undoing. They claim that their local Pukas are a source of joy, always bringing a smile wherever they go. In our experience, they are little more than tricksters, but this incongruity should only speak to the inhuman nature of changelings. They may be inhabiting human bodies, but they are not human. Do not forget that, agents. Pukas represent treachery, and our laboratory tests seem to suggest that they are incapable of telling the truth at all when asked a direct question. Even something as simple and obviously false as "is this paper blue" will be answered with an overt lie. Field agents are asked to see if they can confirm this characteristic with any encountered Pukas. Redcaps are an interesting C-type that we have had great success in exploiting. Interrogated subjects have claimed that redcaps spring from nightmares rather than dreams, and while such mythic trappings should be discarded, it speaks to the metaphysical nature of these creatures. Redcaps are coarse, loud, and outspoken. They are rebellious and delight in sowing pain and chaos in their wake. They seem to be personifications of hunger and malice, and a redcap has the ability to eat anything. Literally anything. Laboratory tests have shown redcaps to be capable of eating human flesh, steel, glass, dirt, and more, all with the same ease. Their metaphysical selves showcase enormous mouths, filled with razor-sharp teeth capable of rending any material. Any redcaps brought in for capture must be muzzled in order to effectively contain them. They will literally eat themselves out of any containment cell. Redcaps have been easy to exploit because they are inherently incapable of doing anything except moving against set power structures. They have been turned against local changeling polities simply by suggesting that the local rulers and the changeling citizenry were two different groups. It can be tricky to turn a redcap cell to our cause, but any diplomatic overtures should be made from a position of weakness. You have to paint the Union as the underdog, and then they will help us. Otherwise, they will see our strength as the true evil they must fight against. Of course, once you have gotten some usefulness out of a redcap cell, they are to be disposed of, like all other deviant types. Satyrs are a C-type which seems to spring from dreams of revelry, passion, and experience. They are hedonists, plain and simple. They like to party, learn, play music, and have sex. Satyrs have been shown to exist normally in close-knit familial bands, and they sometimes travel from place to place following nothing more than their whim. A satyr's metaphysical appearance looks almost exactly the same as the classic Greek depiction of such beings. They have a goat's legs, a person's torso, and horns on the top of their head. They've been shown under laboratory conditions to exhibit wild mood swings, shifting from gleeful and happy to weeping and raging in the course of an instant. These quick-trigger emotions are a weakness that hunter-killer teams can easily exploit. Beyond their constant search for unending pleasure, there's really little that can be said about the satyr that is not already covered in your Greek mythology courses, so agents are encouraged to go back and review. Selkies are an aquatic sea-type that have the ability to change form. They are half seal, half person, and they can shift between the two aspects by removing their seal skin. Unlike other sea types, this skin is what actually contains the essence of the Selkie, and without it, their mortal selves become powerless. Indeed, we have confirmed through laboratory testing and field encounters that destroying a Selkie's seal skin will cause them to immediately become undone, reverting to their mortal form. A Selkie loses access to their powers when physically separated from their skin, even if the skin is not destroyed, and this has proven a useful way to capture them in the field. Agents are advised to secure Selkie skins at any given opportunity. They are to be turned into R&D for further examination. Capture of the Selkie the skin is tied to is a secondary objective. Selkie targets can be identified in the field by a slight webbing between their fingers, even in their mortal form, a showcase of their aquatic heritage. Slaw are unique among sea types in that they prefer to spend a great deal of their time on the other side of the firmament within the interdimensional space codenamed the Shadowlands. They spring from dreams of secrets and decay, of death and mildew and the slimy things that crawl beneath the earth. Indeed, our agents have located several nests of slaw hiding in catacombs and sewers across the world. Their metaphysical appearance reflects these aspects, and they have pale skin, frog-like eyes, greasy dark hair, and are generally unpleasant. Think the townspeople in A Shadow over Innsmouth by H.P. Lovecraft. Slaw like to seek out the unknown, the things at the far edges of existence, and this is why they tend to frequent the Shadowlands so much. They tend to be loners, living at the periphery of society, but this does not make them harder to catch. They stick to stereotypical places like graveyards, sewers, far-flung abandoned houses. If it looks like the Addams family would like to be there, it is a good place to find slaw. Their general isolation also means that it is much easier for us to bring the full bore of our power to bear against them. Most captured slaw have had a nest or lair stuffed to the brim full of deviant artifacts of secret power, so agents are advised that they are a high priority for capture, and be careful. You never know what kind of tricks they might have up their sleeve. Slaw tend to be the weird one, the person that no one likes to talk to. But another clear sign of a Slaw is a person who speaks in a constant whisper. We have confirmed through field observation and laboratory testing that all Slaw can speak no louder than a whisper. Even screams of extreme pain come out as little more than a soft sigh. Trolls are the next kind of C-type, and they are not the kind you find on the internet. Trolls spring from dreams of honor, duty, sacrifice, and strength, and their personalities reflect this fact. They are the warriors of the changeling world, and are almost always fighters or soldiers of some repute within C-type socio-political structure. They are stubborn and nigh impossible to move once they have decided on a course of action. They are stoic and massively strong. We have reports from field teams of trolls tossing cars like toys. Trolls have a varied metaphysical appearance when compared to other C-types. Their skin can range from ice blue to fire red and earth brown, and they can sport trappings such as horns, stony backs, moss for hair, and more. Even in their human guise, these C-types tend to be truly enormous, pushing 7 feet tall or more. Trolls have been confirmed to exhibit an interesting characteristic in the laboratory. They cannot break their word. Any promise a troll makes must be kept, or else they become physically sick and eventually die. This quirk of troll physiology can be exploited by an enterprising agent. Trick a troll into giving their word to you, and you will have them at your beck and call. Hunter-killer teams are advised that out of all the C-types save maybe redcaps, trolls will be the hardest to take on in combat. They are consummate fighters and warriors with a strength that, again, is truly frightening. Only engage with superior numbers from a position of surprise. Finally, we bring ourselves to the Sidhe. That's spelled Sidhe. I know. Irish. I'm sure I've been mispronouncing most of the names in this entire report. Anyway, the Sidhe are the posh rulers of the changeling world. They spring directly from dreams of aristocracy, nobility, and rulership, which means that these things are baked into their very being. Sidhe see themselves as above everyone else, like they're made of better stuff. They tend to be extremely beautiful, even in their mortal guise, and their metaphysical aspect is truly ethereal, so beautiful as to become alien and inhuman. They have long, lithe limbs, flowing, boundless hair, and a grace that can only be described as angelic. We have noticed a divide in the Sidhe that intelligence suggests springs from the shattering almost a millennia ago. We believe that many of the Sidhe returned into the interdimensional space codenamed the Dreaming as the pathways to it started to collapse under the ministrations of the Order of Reason. Where many other C-types decided to undertake the Changeling Way, most of the Sidhe decided to return to Arcadia, where they remained for centuries. I say most, because a small minority of the Sidhe decided to remain behind with the rest of their kin. They undertook the Changeling Way, and became known as the Autumn Sidhe, so that their cousins would have leadership through the rising dark waters of banality. We have begun to see the return of the Arcadian Sidhe to the Earth, though no one quite sure knows why. We only know that the influx began sometime after the Apollo moon landings in 1969. Captured individuals have refused under any circumstances to elucidate on the status of Arcadia, no matter what kind of pressure we have put on them. Sidhe, from both sides, have expressed enormous disdain for one another. Arcadian Sidhe see their brethren who stayed behind as flawed, even tainted by their time on Earth, and the Autumn Sidhe see the ones who fled to Arcadia as ungrateful cowards, not befit to rule. And the Sidhe do rule, make no mistake. They are the ones in charge of changeling society across the world, though the form of these governments can vary from place to place. Hunter-killer teams are advised that Sidhe are a high-priority target for capture or elimination. They almost always have access to a wealth of intelligence and resources that other C-types simply do not have, but removing them from the equation is a sure way to cause chaos in the local changeling government. Alright, agents. That brings us to the end of another long one. I really hope you all are studying these reports. You have to get to know them like the back of your hand if you expect to stay alive for long in this world of darkness. C-types, vampires, and werewolves, oh my! Never forget what we stand against, agents, and use this information to take care of yourselves out there. Until next month, Supervisor Kasdan, signing off.